Hi, I'm Chaplain William Johnson from the Spiritual Care Department here at Christian Hospital, and we want to welcome you once more to our Monday morning meditation. It is always with great joy as I share every week to be able to offer these words of encouragement and hopefully inspiration for each of us as we are journeying through the week and trying to navigate life in service to our community and to our hospitals and to one another. So thank you for giving us your time and giving us your attention for these few moments we have today. Today, I want to talk about life's great balancing act, or the great balancing act, if you will. Uh, as a kid, I was a big fan of Dr. Seuss, and I think it's one of my perennial favorites, one of his books, Oh, the Places You'll Go. Uh, I read it when I was a little kid, but it became a popular cult kind of phenomenon as people began giving this book and reading this book as adults, giving it to those who were graduates from high school and college, encouraging them as they journeyed on. And those of us who have been through our stages in life have discovered that these words from Dr. Seuss serve us even more now than they ever did in life before when we were younger. May not have understood all the words would mean, but we understand them now. And I want to talk about uh, the great balancing act. As a perennial favorite, as I mentioned, Dr. Seuss's wonderful, wise words often reminded us and remind us about how life can take you into some strange directions. Starting out in the world, we didn't always know how things would turn out for us. Be they nursery school, high school, or college graduations, we've given these books, as I've mentioned before, to those who would be trying to start their life and make sense of them, from soaring through those to high heights and seeing great sights to being left in a lurch on a prickly perch. All those rhyming words that Dr. Seuss offered to us addresses life's ups and downs with the trademark humorous verses that only Dr. Seuss can offer. And one of the publishers write these things as we hear these words. And here's what the words say, just a little portion of it. On and on you will hike, and I know you'll hike far and face up to your problems, whatever they are. You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know, and you'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact, and remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft and never mix up your right foot with your left. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98 and three quarters percent guaranteed. I love that. It is one of those stories, and reading that, it reminds us that life is filled with all of these strange challenges that we face. And the real issue is not whether or not we will have ups and downs and whether or not we will be successful and sometimes fail. The real question is how we manage it. And the good news from Dr. Seuss is that it's not about all the things that happen, but how much we enjoy the journey. And so that's what I want to talk about with this balancing act. I think it's important for us to think about that in a larger context because we live our lives in such ways that often have us trying to balance the inner life that we have and the outer life. Or maybe I should say it in another way. We want to balance how we live on stage and what is really happening backstage or off stage. In the on stage, if I will take a few moments to kind of unpack that a minute, we are often concerned about three things, maybe perhaps, maybe many more. But in these three categories is how I kind of think of it. We think of our image, we think of our influence, and we think of our impact. We think of our image. In other words, we're asking constantly, how do I look? Before we present ourselves outside, we are concerned about how we are perceived by others, how people see us. And for whatever it's worth, we are navigating through life, trying to figure out how to obtain things and get things so that our presentation to those outside of us can match up with what's happening. And when we're on stage, we want to know what our image is like. How are we projecting who we are? It can be dangerous, and I can say more about that, but really we're there in that place. Our outer life is often concerned with our image, and as I said, and also our influence. In other words, is anyone listening to me? Does anyone care what I have to say? Does anyone care what it is I'm putting out or presenting to the world? And often we're not just concerned about how we look, but whether or not we have a following. And so in this social media age, we have kind of measured our identity and who we are based on how many people are following us and how many friends we have and how many friend requests we have and how many connections we can make. And so we find ourselves constantly on stage trying to figure out how to manage our image and manage our influence. And then when we're on stage or in that place of trying to keep sense of that, we're trying to hold on to what our impact is. In other words, am I making a difference? And that's so important because as we traverse through our years, some of us have gray hair, no hair, some hair. Some of us are really managing our body image. Some of us are trying to figure out if anybody is listening to us. So we do TED Talks and other things so people can listen to what we have to say. We write books, we read books, we share, we lecture, we teach, we talk. But then we find ourselves often trying to figure out if what we have to say and what we're doing is really making a difference. And if anything has taught us during the last year or two, that our impact is important, and it's imperative that we find some way to journey together. So that while our onstage life reflects our image, our influence, and our impact, our offstage or backstage life reflects these three things. Just bear with me. It reflects our ideas. It reflects our intuition, and it reflects our intentions. In other words, our offstage or backstage life is the place where we kind of scramble and think about what we really are about. And so our ideas and ideals come from that offstage life or the backstage life, where no one really knows what we really think. No one really knows how we really feel. And if we don't open our mouth and don't say anything, our mouths and don't say anything, they will never know really how we feel, or so we think. And so that our ideas, our intuition, our ability to talk about our inner feelings or to deal with what we feel, not only just what our inner thoughts, that's our ideas, but now our inner feelings, our intuition. In other words, in this climate, especially a politically divided climate where everyone feels like things are really tense around us, it is better for some of us to keep our intuitions, what we feel, off stage. Yeah. But then we have this other thing, our intentions, so that when we do act, we know what we were trying to do rather than what actually is perceived or received from another person. And so the balancing act, and I'll go quickly, is about trying to measure and keep intact our image, our influence, and our impact, and then hold together intention with our ideas, our intuition, and our intentions. How do you put those things together and balance life? Dr. Seuss offered us these great words. It says, be careful that you don't mix up your right foot with your left. In other words, whatever it is that is really important to you, don't project that in your outer on-stage life as something other than what you really feel inside. In other words, I'm encouraging you not to live a divided life. Parker Palmer is one of my favorite writers and one of my favorite people, really. I love Parker Palmer's words, and he offers us this imagery so that we can get a sense of what it is that happens when we do live somewhere separate from where we really are. He says that when we are living in a divided life, we sense that something is missing in our lives and search the world for it, not understanding that what is missing is us. He also says that we feel fraudulent, even invisible, because we are not in the world as we really are. He says that the light that is within us cannot illuminate the world's darkness. We feel like we're not making an impact. We're not changing people's lives. We are not having some influence, or people are not listening to us. And then he also says, and we realize that what is happening around us, the darkness that is within us, cannot be illuminated by the world's light. In other words, nothing can make us feel better on the inside. The balancing act is knowing that our inner life and our outer life are intertwined in such a way that we have to live our lives in an undivided way, being honest with ourselves, authentic with ourselves, sharing, even at least with no one else, with ourselves, the truth about ourselves and how we feel about what's happening around us. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think God sits right there in that authentic place of giving us the ability to balance our lives. I was sharing with a friend of mine some time ago about being a kid and being on the seesaw. And as long as someone was on one end of the fulcrum and one person on the other end of the fulcrum, depending what our weight was, we would kind of teeter-totter on that seesaw. But what we discovered is, as long as we were distant away from each other, the seesaw would always find itself trying to balance itself to varying degrees, up and down, depending on whose weight was heavier and how we moved. But when we would occasionally start off and move closer toward one another, then the fulcrum would not move so much and we would find balance. In other words, we don't find balance. It's harder to find balance when our inner life and our outer life are so far apart. It's easier to find balance when we start moving them together. So I encourage you today to try to live into that great balancing act. Move your inner life and outer life together. Start doing what you love and loving what you do. And you'll discover that God sits and meets us in the middle of that. That's my belief. Whatever we believe about God, whoever we believe God is, whether we hold that as just simply what we find meaning in life to be, I want you to be reminded that in that center place is where Dr. Seuss reminded us most of all. That in those moments in which we find ourselves not quite sure, don't be fooled by all the things that are happening. This is not a climb every mountain, accomplish everything, but there is this moment where all journeys face perils, whether from indecision, from loneliness, or worst of all, from too much waiting. We get anxious. But if you sit still, the great balancing act is a place where we can have fun while we're doing life. I hope that you enjoy yourself today and enjoy your week. Be blessed indeed as you journey along. We hope that in the midst of all that you're doing, you discover balance because God sits in the middle of that place. Have a great day. Thank you so much, as always, for all that you do. Remember that you are loved, you are appreciated, and you are irreplaceable. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your kindness for sharing with us today.